I'm a clinical psychologist at Lentegeur Psychiatric Hospital. Also have been part of the Intellectual Disability Division, as well as psychotherapy, and currently as the clinical psychologist at Female Admissions Unit. I'd like to introduce our speaker today, Dr. Bonita Gordan, who's with us today. She's a dedicated health and well-being specialist with extensive experience in mental health. She holds a doctorate in social work, specializing in mental health and well-being from the University of Pretoria. Her master's degree focused on employee assistance programs, where she conducted quantitative research within organizational settings. With over 2 decades of experience, her expertise spans across mental health awareness, resilience building, and professional development for diverse sectors, including over 11 years at Alexandra Hospital and in the corporate environment. Dr. Gordan's research focuses on the psychosocial impact of caregiving, particularly among families and service providers caring for individuals with intellectual disabilities. She also spearheaded and continues to actively support a caregiver group for people with developmental disabilities within the Tableview area and surrounding communities. Through a private practice, Dr. Gordan provides community support, corporate training, individual therapy, as well as family therapy. Her dedication to cultural sensitivity and inclusion is evident in her approach, ensuring that psychoeducational tools are accessible and relevant to the South African context. We'd like to welcome you, Dr. Gordan, and thank you for speaking to us today. The talk today will be on evaluating the impact of effectiveness of the psychoeducational program for caregivers of children with intellectual disabilities. I'm quite interested in the presentation today, and also taking note that it is Intellectual Disability Month. So over to you, Dr. Gordan.
Thank you, Fatima. I don't know if anyone can see me. Hi, I'm very excited.
We can see you.
Okay, good. I'm very excited to be here today. It's quite an honor for me to be here. And there's people in this department that really helped me and guided me. So it's my privilege to be here today. So I'm just going to share my screen quickly. Okay. Let me just go to show. Okay. So I'm going to do the presentation will be on evaluating the impact of the research study that I did through the years of 2019 to 2022 for the purposes of completing the doctorate degree. And what I did was I developed a psychoeducational program for caregivers of children with intellectual disability. And just to give a little bit of a background on that, or how I came to that topic, I was stuck between poverty alleviation for caregivers, because I felt like there's a poverty concern that I had, and then this topic about psychoeducation, and speaking to several clinicians that said to me, this would be the topic that will be a good idea, and that is quite a need amongst caregivers. Being a social worker at Alexandra Hospital for those many years, often the doctors would ask the caregivers how the patient is taking their medication, how they are doing, how they are sleeping. And I would be, as the social worker, more focused on the caregivers. And then during my time there, I realized we needed a psychoeducational group for caregivers at Alexandra Hospital, and I started that. And so we ran that on a Wednesday when people come and get their meds. We did a group and we had an 8-session program for that time, and it went well to the degree that a conference came up in Kruger National Park. And then the CEO of Alexandra Hospital at that time allowed me to go and do this group work presentation that I'm doing at Alexandra Hospital, to present it at this conference. And then at the conference, they said, you need to turn this into a doctorate degree. So that's the whole background. That's professionally the background, but on a personal level, I have a child that's high functioning, diagnosed with high functioning autism, and there's a whole background on that. And then I've also got my sister's child who is 15 years old. He's still on a nappy and he's got intellectual disability. So I just feel I keep finding that I'm kind of called to this field because it's just such an interesting, keep being drawn into it and love being there for caregivers. So we're going to cover the background of the study, the methods that was used, and then the manual that I then developed and presented to the caregivers, and then the outcome of that. So the background was that in the Western Cape, as we know, a lot of us working in the Western Cape are aware that most people living with intellectual disability are cared for by caregivers who don't get any remuneration for taking care of the person. They often have to leave their job to take care of the individual. And they don't have education to take care of the person, or they're very limited in resources. And despite unique challenges of the caregivers' needs, there were no psychoeducational programs that was run for this population group in the Western Cape. And so the objectives of the study aim to understand caregiver distress and develop a psychoeducational program to support them. So the mixed method study research approach was used. So in the qualitative phase, we had all the informal caregivers. So they were the parents, the neighbors, the sisters. They were taking care of them, but with no remuneration. Okay. And there were 25 people that were interviewed. 21 of them were females, 4 were males. They were predominantly mothers, but also included 4 fathers, 1 sister, 2 foster mothers, and a neighbor. Sorry, how do I move? Okay. The participants ranged from ages 32 to 70 years old. Then in the quantitative phase, we had the formal caregivers. So those are the caregivers that's in the group homes taking care of people, but they're being paid for it. So therefore they are classified as formal caregivers, formally paid caregivers from group homes and day centers in Western Cape. There were 100 respondents took part in the study, and they were 94% of them were female caregivers, and 6% were men. 73% of the respondents had no training regarding intellectual disability, and 57% of them earned less than 5,000 Rand a month. So in the qualitative phase, we explored caregiver experiences through interviews. Those 25 people were interviewed. I went to their home, and it was in COVID. Let me tell you, it was in COVID. One lady had to interview outside a gate, and she's in the yard, but we made it happen. And then quantitative phase was measured the impact of the program using a pre and post test design with a Likert scale questionnaire. So before the program started, we gave them a questionnaire. Then we implemented the program, and then afterwards we gave them another questionnaire to see if the program had an impact. And we did it over 2 days. In Stellenbosch, in a hall in Stellenbosch, and I'm so grateful for everybody that came to that program. Okay, so in the qualitative research findings, right, pseudonyms were used with quotes. So it's just so that you're going to hear me using people's names, but it's not their real names. I changed their names. So what came out from the interview, right, the results that came out from the interviews were that there's a lack of psychoeducation for caregivers. The evidence showed that some participants believed that they themselves were the cause of the intellectual disability, or that the family was cursed. And many mentioned the limited information received from professionals in the field, and they subsequently did their own research. And this is a quote from a mom that said, "I was on antibiotics and I did not know that it would interfere with my pregnancy. I always told my husband that I am the cause for my child being the way he is. And the child is 21 years old. So she believed because she was on antibiotics, her child now is intellectual disability. Then the next that came out was socioeconomic impact of caregiving, the impact on them. The findings indicated that the role of the caregiver impeded the respondents' ability to work and provide for themselves and their family. The disability grant was often the only source of income. And this is a quote from a mom. Lisa is very expensive. She eats the whole day. Lisa's disability grant is my only income. I used to iron, but I can't even go char because my sister refuses to watch her for me because of her behavior. I must pay rent with her mother, with her money. So these are verbatim quotes. Eh? Caregiver resource constraints. The evidence showed that many participants tried to reach out for assistance and repeatedly found that the medical, police, and social work services were unavailable or ill-equipped to assist them. This is a quote. I used to call the police and they just came and couldn't do much. The police stopped coming when I call because they don't know how to deal with this. He started to get aggressive and attacking us physically. We went to The Voice for help. The Voice is the newspaper. We were on the front of The Voice. I appealed to the public to help us, but it didn't help. So her child is 31 years old and she is a widow. So she felt like the resources out there to help her with her child wasn't there. It was lacking. Psychosocial impact on the caregiver. The evidence indicates that taking care of a person with ID has a psychosocial impact on the caregiver. The participating caregivers referred to a lack of support as well as isolation on an individual level. This is what I saw a lot, is that isolation. Okay. Moreover, they experience this lack of support and isolation due to community stigmatization as well. Some participants shared how caregiving impacted their family relationships as well as their ability to care for their own mental and physical health. So this is a quote. I am not happy about the breakup with a father. I'm very sad about that. I don't have friends since 2017, since he is born. So when the child was born, the breakup happened with the child's father, and she's been isolated since. Okay. Resilience. So some participants absolutely showed resilience, which was very, very, very inspiring. Some participants found their role as caregiver to be rewarding. They believe their caregiver role came from a higher calling. They remain calm when the person with intellectual disability presents with challenging behavior, and they prioritize self-care. And really, it was about 2 or 3 participants that were actually showing that their perception of it was positive. And so this is what the mom said. She's got 3 children. All 3 are children have intellectual disability. And I went to her home and I interviewed her, and all adult children had intellectual. And she said, God looked down on earth and said, I have kids to throw down. Who can I bless? He was standing on his throne looking for a mother. I'm looking for a mother. I'm looking for a mother. And says, there's a mother that can cope with this one. And then she gestured how he's throwing the children to her. I appreciate my children and God. God has a plan, and I'm in that plan. So it was wonderful actually to be at this lady and see the way she saw things. So then after this, doing the first session, the first qualitative phase, we did the program design, but also, I also interviewed experts. That's also part of this department. Thank you so much to you people that helped me. Appreciate it. And after interviewing experts, after interviewing the parents, the program was designed, and a training manual was developed out of that program. So we had a training manual for them. with the module A was mentioned as called psychoeducation of caregiver with people with disability. Module B was psychosocial impact on the caregiver. Module C was strengthening the family unit. And module D was assessing and development of resources. So we gave them the training manual, and here's the one that we gave them, the manual that we gave them. Got it here, a copy of it. And then we did, as stated before, we did the pre-test, then gave the manual, and then we did the program, and then we came up with some research findings. But first, I'm just going to go through what was actually discussed during this program. Just going to briefly go through that so that we have an idea. So we covered the needs. This is now what we discussed during the training of the formal caregivers, the 100 people that came out. We spoke about the developmental needs, which would include scholastic skills, workshops, what they would need developmentally, occupational therapy that they would need, physiotherapy, life skills, medication. We spoke about compliance to medication, supervision. Later on, we speak a little bit more to adherence of medication, supervision, whether the person needs to be supervised when taking their medication, pharmacy, getting new scripts, outpatient follow-up, assistance with daily living, grooming, dressing, brushing of teeth, feeding, incontinence. Some people need to be nappy change, assistance with physio aids such as wheelchairs, financial, application of the disability grant, application of important documents such as ID. When I was working at Alex, I did a lot of this, going to home affairs with a person, holding their hand and standing at home affairs with a person to try and get them an ID. It would just be so difficult to get them an ID, and often we'd get the home affairs to come out to the hospital because they actually wouldn't, sit quietly in the booth for an ID card, so we'd have to settle for the green card, the green book. Okay, securing a procurator, somebody can make a decision when the parent is no longer there. Final will. A lot of parents didn't think of that they need to have a will for their children of ID. They just say, well, the sister will take care of him. But you actually need to make arrangements, and these are the type of things we spoke about there. Adherence therapy. So this is again about medication. How do you do it when somebody is refusing to take it? Nurses put it in their food. They know it's in their food. We had a discussion on that. Being a resilient caregiver. So I'm just briefly going through it. Like I said, we did it over 2 days, and just for the sake of time, I'm obviously not going to share every single detail that was discussed, but those were the topics that we discussed. Issues that they face. It was important to kind of acknowledge the stuff that they go through as caregivers. So we spoke about community stigmatization. The lady who has the 3 kids, she said that she says that people in her community called her house the house of stupids. And that caused her just to kind of just be with the kids and just enjoy her kids and not really engage with the community, because she believed that this is what they called her family. Isolation, can't go anywhere. Yesterday, I had it was a lady of the support group that I started. I'll tell you a little bit about that later. And she said, I just want to go to church. I can't even go to church because I have no one to leave him with. Okay. Lack of support of family and friends, physical exhaustion, financial strain. You have to give up your job. You can't go look for a job. Services are expensive. You worry about the child's future. You worry about the safety of the child. Who's going to take care of them? People take advantage of them. Children with intellectual disability, and adults also. Life changes. Sometimes you go through stuff. The caregiver goes through a divorce themselves, or they go through bereavement themselves. So they go through stuff. And so we ask them, how do you actually cope? How do you cope with it all? People have bad ways of coping, such as cigarettes and alcohol, screaming, lashing out, being impatient, resenting the individual spikes, and your spouse, you mad at everyone, right? And we went into cognitive distortions, and then we said we asked them to mention what good ways do you actually cope. So I'm hoping you guys that's here in this meeting can actually tell me, how do you cope? Even if you're just gonna write it in the comment section or mention it, please, so that I'm not the only one talking. I'd like to hear your voice. How do you cope? So we spoke about the different types of coping styles. Emotion-focused coping style means can be exercise, taking a bath, having a pep talk, meditating, problem-focused coping style. I think I mentioned it here. Reaching out for help for your child, like going to a psychologist or a doctor, reaching out for help for yourself. Bibliotherapy is reading and gaining knowledge of your child's diagnosis. And then establishing a routine for yourself and the person that you take care of. Plan for events, prepare the individual, be prepared. Go with a little, we spoke about having a little survival box. If you're going to go to a wedding, let them know, ask for a table at the back of the room. Prepare before you go to an event, and mobilize respite care, getting a little bit of a break. I used to, between my sister and I, we used to do respite care for weekends for each other. And it's helped a lot. But on a daily basis, I try to cope by having some tea in the evenings with honey, just to wind down. It kind of tells me mentally the day is over, you're going to relax now. And so I try to make it normal for the caregivers to do little things like that to take care of themselves. So emotion-focused coping style is entail making efforts to change or reduce the negative emotions associated with stress. So many people say, I cannot do it if I don't have my faith. If I don't have God, I cannot do it. So many people, that is emotion-focused coping style. Self-pampering, we just spoke about that. Warm bath and a shower, a support group, which we started in table view. Regular exercise. Mind dumping is just writing down your emotions and letting it all out. And then I tell people, get a burn journal, because that's all those things that you write down, you don't want someone to read. So then write in the journal where you can burn, and then another one that you can keep. Okay, breathing exercises. We took them through a breathing exercise. Crying, very therapeutic. One lady said, I don't want to cry because then I look weak. But we spoke about how it can really be the soap and water of your heart. It can really, afterwards you feel much better. To normalize feeling despondent sometimes, and find ways to have fun. Watch your favorite TV show, and then doing the locus of control exercise, which was a whole exercise that we did. We split them up into groups and explained the exercise to them, and then they needed to give feedback. But now I want to ask you guys, I already mentioned my tea with honey in the evening. What do you guys still do to unwind and relax? If you can just take a moment to do that quickly, if you don't mind, guys. Are we still here?
We're thinking.
If you're thinking it's a bad sign, Prof, it's a bad sign. You must have it like that. You must do something every single day to take care of yourself. Okay? Walking in the evening, going to the gym. You must have something that you take care of yourself with every single day. Okay. So there's self-care exercises. We spoke about. Then we spoke about investing in your peace, your morning routine. We spoke about routine. Yeah. Go ahead. Nazira?
Oh, sorry. I didn't even realize I unmuted myself. But I exercise and I actually dance like crazy. So I put on really crazy music and I dance to get all the excess stress out.
That's exactly it. Okay, excellent. Thanks for that. Thanks so much for that, Nazira. Dancing absolutely helps big time. Okay. Invest in your peace, the morning routine, slow things down, soothing music, screen-free time. We first, what do we do many times? They try to unwind with TikTok till 11 o'clock at night, and then first thing in the morning, TikTok. So we spoke about that and how that can really impact your sleep and how really being invested in your physical well-being, getting your sleep, getting good nutrition, how that will help you to build resilience. It's kind of being proactive in your resilience building is by doing things like that. Limit your screen time, affirmations. Yeah. So we went over cognitive distortions as well. So the different cognitive distortions we discussed, mind reading, fortune telling, catastrophizing, labeling, and then we went through it. Okay. So we said that cognitive distortion is just a fancy word for thinking trap. So we would say thinking trap could be, why does this always happen to me? Why am I in this situation? Seems like it always happens to me. That is a thinking trap. And this thinking trap particularly likes words like never, ever, every, always. So look out for them. So we kind of tried caregivers to look at their language and how they use, how they use their words, because it can really impact how you feel. Your thoughts can impact how you feel. Okay. So it's cognitive distortions is jumping to conclusions, tendency to make irrational assumptions about people and circumstances. And so cognitive distortions with caregivers is important because it influences how we take care of someone with intellectual disability. We often have to make decisions on their behalf. So we have to be aware of our thinking, and we have to make sure that it's not just the thinking trap that we're dealing with and that it's impacting the person with ID. So yeah, we went through mind reading and what that means. So you believe that you can think, you know what they are thinking, which is quite a common one because, they struggle verbally often. So then you kind of, as a caregiver, have to preempt what they are thinking. So for examples with mind reading is he thinks he can walk all over me. I had one parent say that he thinks he can walk all over me, but he's not talking. So how do you know for sure that that's what he's thinking? So we needed to just make sure that we don't just assume what the person with ID is thinking. Okay. Negative filtering out all the positive information about a specific situation and only allowing the negative information. That's when you can't see anything good about the situation and you just see the bad in the situation. All or nothing thinking, it's like it's got to be my way or the highway. It's got to be this, that, perfectionist type of thinking. And then we spoke about how we can reframe our thoughts, learning to identify how we think, write it down, how we think, write it down. Look for another perspective on the thought, look for exceptions to the thought. Maybe it's partially right or wrong. Look for both sides of the situation. Look if it has pros or cons and watch for extreme wording such as never and always. Reframing your thoughts, continue. Try thinking the opposite for a second, right? If you say, no, they're talking negatively about me, and say, no, they're talking positively about me. Just decide that. And it works, eh? I try that in my personal life. I just decide, no, it's not personal. They all think I'm wonderful, and it works to just think the opposite than think the worst all the time. Okay. If a friend tells you this thought, what would you advise? So if that friend tells you that negative thing that you're thinking, what would you advise that friend? So this is all to help you reframe your thoughts. How would life be different if you thought differently? If you just decide to choose a different thought? If you were more vulnerable and truthful, what would you say? Focus on progress, not perfection. So just go to the calm mind, the rational mind, the wise mind, as we know about. And what would that thought actually be if you're more truthful? Okay, and then after that, we went through developing of resiliency, and we spoke about the 7C model of resilience. So this is the 7C model of resilience. The one is competence, knowing that the degree to which you feel like you have the ability to do this, to able to take care of them. So 3 basic questions when it comes to competence is, do I communicate in such a way that empowers my child? So we wrote child, but we know we've got adults with intellectual disability as well, right? Do I allow my child to make safe mistakes so he can learn from it versus being overprotective? Right? So we wanted to make sure that the caregivers know, let's not be overprotective and say that the person with ID is never allowed to make a mistake. Let them allow to make a mistake, but within a safe parameters, right? Do I help my child focus on their strength? And do I focus on my strength and continually build on it? So we had a whole discussion on that. In your confidence, in order to do it, 3 basic questions that the caregiver should ask. Do I see the best in my child so he can see the best in himself? Do I see the best in the person with ID so that they can see the best in themselves? Do I praise them when he does well? Do I praise myself enough? Do I acknowledge how well I'm doing as a caregiver? Do I acknowledge him when he is helpful and kind? Or is it just a given that they have to be helping with chores? Or are we actually catching them when they are doing really, really well? Coping. So coping, the basic questions the caregiver should ask themselves is, do I model problem solving or do I react emotionally when I'm overwhelmed? Like, how do you act? You know, many times the caregivers will call and say, you know what, he's throwing out the windows, he's doing all these things, right? So we, at the same time, how their behavior is, but also we have to ask ourselves as caregivers, and I include myself in that. Like I said, I've got a child on the autism spectrum. How do I react when I'm overwhelmed in front of my child? Okay. Do I model the importance of caring for my body through nutrition, exercise, and adequate sleep? Do I create a family environment in which talking and listening to each other are safe, comfortable, and productive? So if the child is acting out or is acting out, do I as a caregiver, what type of environment do I create? Is it a safe environment where the person with ID, now I know there's limitations around that, of course, but how they would be able to express what they are needing. Sometimes acting out is a way of expressing because they possibly don't feel heard. Okay. Control, heard or seen. Control. So basic questions a caregiver can ask. Do I think of the future one step at a time? Do I help my child understand that no one can control all circumstances, but we can shift the odds by choosing positive behaviors? Do I reward demonstrated responsibility? So to which degree do I feel like I'm in control of the situation? But then we also did a whole exercise on control so that we can understand that some things are out of your control and that it's important to kind of put your energy on those things that is within your control. Character. So the character is who you are when no one is there. What's your character, right? Basic questions is, do I help my child understand how their behavior may affect other people, good or bad? Character, like I said, your character will talk to you when you're not there. So do I help my child understand how their behavior may affect people, good or bad? Do I value my child so clearly that I model the importance of caring for others? Am I careful to avoid racist statements or stereotypes about other people? So how, basically, in your character, how do you treat other people? Because the person that you're taking care of could copy that behavior of the caregiver. Connection, your ability to really make connection with the person with intellectual disability. Does my child feel safe to come to me for emotional support in times of difficulties? Right? And I had to sit with this one a lot with my own child because he seemed to be so close with his father, and he felt it's like his father was more of a safe person than what I was for him. He seemed to just gravitate to his father, and I had to ask myself, am I creating a safe place for my child to feel like they could come to me? You have to just ask yourself that question. Do I allow my child to express all types of emotions, or do I suppress unpleasant feelings? So do you suppress unpleasant feelings yourself as a caregiver? Do I encourage my child to feel pride in various ethnic, religious, and cultural groups that they belong to be proud of themselves? Okay. Contribution, it's got to do with community contribution. Do I model the importance of serving others within my community? Do I create opportunities for my child to serve others? Do I create a culture of serving others within my household? Right? Okay, and then we went after speaking about this resilience, 7 C's. We spoke about the good enough and perfection caregiving. Because what happens is the caregivers doubt themselves and they feel like what they do isn't good enough, so then they just give up. And then we really made a distinction between good enough parenting and perfection parenting. So we said, okay, good enough caregiver, love their children. They try to make the best decision for everyone. They do the best they can with what they have. They make mistakes and they learn from it. And we were able to ask each other, are you this? So then that qualifies you as a good enough caregiver. We are not striving for perfection. We're striving for good enough. Okay. And then that was the understanding of the dichotomy control exercise. We went through that, and then we did the exercise where we put the problems in front of them, and then we divided them into group, and then we said, how would you manage this now that you understand the locus of control exercise? We first took it through them, and then they gave feedback in groups. And then we went over into the empowered family. Of course, we had breaks. Of course, we had lunch. At least it was a whole day thing. The empowered family. What does it look to be an empowered family? So what lies behind us and what lies before us are tiny matters compared to what lies within us. I just like that quote so much. What is the problem with challenging behavior? We discussed that. And we said that we must understand that when you see a problem behavior, that there is a message in that problem behavior. So the empowered family members are to give each other permission to tend to themselves. Like, it's okay to take care of yourself. It's okay. Caregivers often feel like it's not okay. They have to be there 24/7 with a person with ID. Have assertiveness to coordinate respite care. You actually have to have that assertiveness and coordinate it yourself. Don't just say, well, Alex, don't give respite care anymore, because Alex used to give 2 weeks respite care. And so then people say, well, no, when we started the support groups, they're like, well, I can't come here anymore because you don't do the 2 weeks respite care anymore. So I try to explain to people how you can mobilize respite care and be resourceful yourself and organize respite care amongst each other and within your community to kind of strengthen and empower this caregiver so they don't feel like I'm a victim of my circumstance, but to kind of see what they can do with what they have to mobilize respite care for themselves. Have the assertiveness to coordinate respite care and request assistance from other family members, trusted neighbors, and friends. You call a meeting with everybody and say, this is what I need. It's okay to, at times, need a break from your family members. Caregiver toolkit. Then we said every caregiver, they've got a toolkit. What's in the toolbox? So we said they are resourceful. Okay. Resourcefulness of caregivers. They learn skills to overcome adversities. They view challenges as opportunities to practice their resourcefulness. They respond in culturally meaningful ways. So we said, make a list of who's your support team. Make a list, get a folder and make a list. Who's all your people that you can call on? It's the doctor, it's your sister, it's the social worker, it's the police. Another list, a trusted family member, a trusted neighbor. Other caregivers and parents, home prepare people, right? The plumbers, electricians, medical professionals, respite care arrangements, mental health people, professionals. We spoke about the police, the clinic, and then the Western Cape Forum for IDA. They are huge support, huge support. Make a list of your support team, make a phone list, start a WhatsApp group. We try to get people thinking about what they can do to help themselves. So be proactive in utilizing social media, which is what I did with the support group that we started here in Tableview. I'll tell you about that. Training and development of your team. This was like lost on them, that you as a caregiver can actually train your team. So once you've made your team, your list of people, now you can train your team and say, look, my child has intellectual disability and this is what it means, okay? Find out the names of the professionals that are the experts, educate your family members on your research, and then tell them, what do you need from them? How would it help if they could be a part of your support team? Record keeping, very important. They have to make sure that they get a ring binder, put the picture of the person with the ID in there, their height, weight, birthmarks, likes and dislikes. We've got this in the wards, right? School and workshop information, medical professional, list of medication, environmental. Like the other thing that we spoke about was, that I didn't include in this presentation, we spoke about household safety. Where do you keep your matches? How do you use the iron? Where do you keep the iron? The kettle? How do you empower them to use the kettle? Things in the house, like cleaning products in the house. We spoke about that as well. Okay, so then this is the results. After we did that whole training, then we gave them another questionnaire, and then this was the results. So when it came to understanding intellectual disability before the training, 36% said that they've got an understanding. After training, 92% said they've got an understanding. Developing resiliency, said 20%. After training, they felt 90% felt they had a better understanding, or felt they got a better grip on developing resilience. Resourcefulness went up to 90%. Managing challenging behavior, they felt like more equipped, but with to 89%. Emotional acceptance, I really didn't even speak to that now. I had a slide on it, but 88% felt they had a better understanding on it. Cognitive distortions, they said 89%. Understanding dichotomy of control, 89%. And after training, and self-care and coping tools, 88% felt that they're better equipped. The empowered family was, they felt before training, the results was 23%. After that was 89%. So a significant number of respondents moved from a negative response in the pre-test to a positive response in the post-test. And so it can be concluded that the intervention of the program was the reason for these positive responses. And this is another graph. We asked them, how equipped do you feel for taking care of somebody with ID after this training? And 1% said, I feel the same as I did before the program. And 14% said, I feel somewhat more equipped. And then 85% said, I feel much more equipped. So some of the remarks that they wrote was, it was extremely informative and exciting. The content is compiled to assist the carer personally, as well as equip them with the task needed to work with a person with ID, gained valuable tools for coping strategies. I learned I'm not a failure. I love that one. We got a lot of comments, but this one was my favorite. I learned I'm not a failure. That was I loved it so much. Thinking of the second training, keep up the good work. Program has good strategies. So next steps. So I did social work like 20 something years ago when I studied on bachelor degree. And I can't remember that we dealt with intellectual disabilities. And so I really want to work on a social worker's role in assisting caregivers of people with developmental disabilities. I was requested to do a presentation on that, and I did. So I did with somebody with what would be the social workers, which I also had in my thesis. What would be the social worker's role in supporting people with intellectual disability, to really make that part of a curriculum somehow. And then mobilize more support group. So what I did was in July 2024, when I went into full-time private practice, I wrote a post on Facebook and I said, but it was actually just me, but I said, we are starting a support group. for people with intellectual disabilities for the table view and surrounding areas. If you are interested, please contact me. And then we started the support group. And I got this lady, Casey, who responded to that post. And she's kind of running it for me now. I mean, she's running it, we're running it together. And for Casey, table view and surrounds includes far out areas. She just lets everybody in, which we are happy about. And so part of my role in the support group is I would do pro bono sessions for people with caregivers of people with intellectual disabilities. Yesterday I had a session with somebody from Kailicha, so just help them on like in my private practice, I obviously can't do that in every aspect. So if you come to me with gender-based violence or something like that, then but I will limit my pro bono work to intellectual disabilities and to help caregivers with that. And so that's kind of what I do. And then Casey, she does like we communicate, we support each other throughout the group. And then we also have outreaches where we like for instance on Christmas, she did a whole collection where she also posts on Facebook, we need nappies, we need, when people donated stuff, and then she went and distributed to everybody that's in the support group. And also we had a gathering here at my home. We had our first gathering here, and we're gonna have our second gathering in April in a school hall in Tableville for people with developmental disability, intellectual disabilities. And like I said, our support group is stretching to Kailicha. They indicated they'll be there. We at 70 people. That includes caregivers, the children, the family. 70 people that's going to come for the event on the 12th of April. So we're very excited about how the support group is growing. And we don't want anybody to live in isolation anymore and to feel like they've got to hide their child. There's people out there, it's like-minded people out there, and we can be there for each other. And then next steps also is to distribute these programs out, get more training to caregivers. But the problem is caregivers, they don't work, they can't, they can't pay for your time to come and do this training for them. So we need to figure out how we're going to actually distribute the program to caregivers, because they do find it helpful. Yeah, so that's kind of next steps and where we are leaning in this. So recommendations, the psychoeducational program can educate caregivers regarding positive coping strategies. Using these strategies in challenging caregiving situations, caregivers could develop a greater sense of ease and confidence despite resource constraints. So we are gonna make it happen despite the resource constraints. And then the knowledge generated by the study yields important insights for social workers and other professionals to render relevant intervention programs, support and resources, not only to the persons with intellectual disability, but also to their caregivers. And then it's important to recognize that caregivers of people with ID have diverse needs, and therefore a one-size-fits-all approach doesn't always work, it isn't always accurate. However, caregivers should be consulted when we do service delivery and evaluations so that the resources can appropriately be tailored to them and allocated to the families and caregivers. And then here's my details. Okay, thank you so much.
Dr. Gordan, thank you very much for a very inspiring presentation of your doctoral results. Sorry that